card I'm going to make today, I will be using the StampIn Up Lasting Lily set. I am not a StampIn Up demonstrator, but my husband gave me some money for my birthday this year, and currently it's their celebration, and if you spend $100, this set is a free add-on you can choose. And it was just so beautiful I couldn't pass it up. And so with this set, it's a super smooth, fine detailed stamp. If I rub my finger on here, I feel hardly any texture at all. Maybe like when your skin's dry and just have a tiny bit of a bump. Just a very smooth, silky stamp. And because of that, when I was trying to use it the first time, it wasn't working for me. I have here some of the samples of what I tried. And pretty much all of my inks are really new because I'm fairly new to stamping. And I discovered that if you have a wet, juicy ink pad, you're going to get a splotchy, spotted, not very pretty stamp. And this stamp is supposed to be translucent, where you can see the stem of the flower through the petal, and with the wetter inks, you just don't see it. And so, after getting frustrated and trying several things, I ended up trying my children's stamp pads. And they have the cheap ColorBox ones. We bought these, I'm pretty sure that we got them for $1. They usually, I think, are $2. And so I tried theirs and they worked perfectly. So that's what I'm going to use for this demonstration today. And so normally when I'm stamping, I will pick up my stamp pad or my ink pad and put it on the stamp from the back. I find that I get less ink on the block that way, and I get better coverage on the stamp. But since this pad is, usually the pads are raised and easier to do that with, since this one's sunk in, I find that it just doesn't work as well. So we'll just do it a little bit different today. And so see with this drier ink, you can see the beautiful translucent pattern. The stem shows, and we got that inked perfectly, and so it just came out exactly how I wanted it to. So now I'm going to do a couple of the smaller lilies to the side. I'll do one, let's see. I'll do one high. I may not have inked that as well. Oh, I did. It turned out just fine. I'll do one lower here. Let's do it like that. I'm going to let that sit for a second to get into the paper good. I don't think I inked that one as well either. Okay. And then on this set, it has two stems. There's one with a leaf and then one that's a little bit fatter. The fatter stem goes with the larger lily. And so we're going to do that one first. Ink that up real good. And I didn't ink the bottom of the stem because I'm going to be ripping this paper to be a little shorter, and it won't matter if it's on there or not. And then for the stems, I'm actually using my Holtz Distressed Oxides. And this is my favorite green of all time. I just love this color. And because I've used it a bunch, it's a drier pad. And so it's working better than my other ones did. And this pattern, just like with the lily for the stem, it's got real pretty lines that show up in it. But because this pad is still a little bit wetter than the ColorBox pad, it still didn't do quite as translucent as I would like. But I'm going to fix that to let the highlights show up in a minute. And then the little stamping down here that showed up by accident, I didn't take time to clean my block off. That's going to be just fine. It's not going to matter. Because I said I'm going to rip the bottom off. And then there's also a big stem here. And with lilies in real life, you'll see the bottom of the leaf is fat and the top is narrow. And so that's how this stamp's designed to be used. And so I'm going to ink that up good. And we're going to line this up with the stem so that just kind of comes off the side. And I stamped off the edge of the paper with it, but that's just fine. And then, I'm going to use this scrap here. Let's see. I really don't want to stamp this off the edge. I'm going to try to line it up real good. And let's do this one like that. Okay. No, I like it. That'll be fine. Okay. And then I'm going to use my water brush. I absolutely love these. And because the distressed oxides are activated with water, and they are a water-based ink, you can move the pigment around. And so I'm just gonna get a little bit more water out of my brush. I'm just gonna wet it. It's gonna smooth it out a little. And where these accents are supposed to be, where it's supposed to be lighter, but it doesn't really show up because of the kind of my ink pad being juicier, I can just move the pigment around and have it look a little more like a highlight, like it's supposed to. And of course, this is completely optional, just what my taste is. And so there we go. Let me clean that off. Okay, I'm gonna close up my ink pad. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna rip this. In my sample, I used a die cut and did a little trim for the border there. But you don't have to use a die cut machine. If you don't have one, you can always make a nice edge just by ripping. And so when you rip, the side that rips down will have the tear on top, and the side that rips up will have the tear on the bottom. So as I pull it, you see this piece of paper is the one on the bottom, and the paper is ripping up off of it, leaving the edge. And I'm going to rip it just so it has a little bit of some texture to it. And I didn't want a straight line. So now I'm going to go back to my ColorBox ink. And in the Lasting Lily set, there's this kind of funny looking splotch stamp. And when you ink it up, it almost looks like it's been sponged. It's a real nice texture. So I thought I would use that to start. And this first stamp's going to show up dark, but it'll be okay, because I'm going to stamp off the ink a few times and let it fade out through the card on the bottom here. And I want this side to be a little more orange than the other side, so I'm just gonna do it a few times. And then let's do here. Okay, I'm happy with that. And now, and I had a little bit of ink on my block up there, but that's okay. So I'm going to take my, I guess you'd call this a color duster or maybe a color sponge. I'm not sure what they're called, but it's the Tim Holtz sponge brushes. And I'm just going to dip some ink and put that some on here just to kind of tone it down and add the orange. I think it adds such a nice effect when you add a little color. It makes the white not be quite as bright. And I think it just makes the flowers glow a little. Now, if you didn't want any of the ink to show up on the stems, you could mask them off with a sticky note or piece of paper. I didn't feel like doing that today, so I'm not. But maybe in another video I can show you how, if you would like to learn how to do that. And so there you go. I think I'm happy with that. And then for the card itself, like I said, it's an A2 card, so it's 5 1/4 or 5.5 by 4 1/4. And I need to go get a piece of paper that I forgot. 1 minute. All right, I'm back. This is my first ever YouTube video. So thank you for hanging in there with me as I figure out how to do this. So this is an A2 card, which is 4 1/4 by 5.5. And for my background, I'm using a green piece of paper just from a matte stack. I don't remember which one it was, but I bought it from Hobby Lobby several months ago. And I think it was a 4 by 6 or maybe 4.5 by 6.5. And I just took that sheet and cut it down to 1/4 inch smaller than the card. So that's 4 inches by, is that 5 1/4? And then our design we stamped is just 1/4 inch narrower than that. And then we ripped it to just a length that looks nice, that has a good amount of green left. In my example card, I did not do a sentiment, but on this one we're going to. So I wanted enough space Sorry if my head's in the camera there. I want to get this centered good. But I wanted to have enough space at the bottom for our sentiment. And so I mentioned earlier, I don't have a lot of crafting supplies yet. And my goal is to actually not buy very many of them. I will eventually get a lot of these things, but when you can use less and use it more times, I try to find things that are really practical that you can use again and again. And so ideally, I'll be able to do this and spend less money and have more fun and less clutter to go through. Don't have a lot of space either. And so it's nice when you can just find what you want easily. So there we go. So for the part that I'm going to use for my sentiment, this is a die cut set that I got. It's a Sizzix set. It has, I think, maybe 4 or 5 different designs and then little plates that you can stamp out as well. And I decided for the small one to use the same distress oxide ink that I used on the stem of the lily, because I just thought that would blend nicely. When you use like colors together, or colors that are the same, it gives the card a more unified look. And I have a different kind of brush that I use for my oxides than I use for other inks, and these were a couple bucks at Walmart. And they're just kids paint brushes, and they came in 4 different colors. There's, I think, a green, a red, a blue, and a yellow. And so I use the green one for all my greens and the reds for my reds and oranges and pinks, etc. And I find I don't have too much problems not mixing colors with just those 4. And then I've got the same little color duster and pad that I used earlier here. I'll use that for this orange. I just think this is such a pretty little cutout. Okay, that's probably enough there. Close that up so my inks don't dry out. And then I have an old thank you stamp. It's the only one I have that fits this size. It's an old foam mounted stamp that's hard to stamp with. And I'm going to use some Ranger archival ink. This is a dark gray color. I'm going to ink that up good and make sure there's no ink on the edges. I actually trimmed the edges off of this pad because they were so high up. It was really easy to get the little square around my stamps. And nobody wants that. So let's get this lined up good. And I really don't like the foam mounted stamps, but it's what I have and it's what works. And take a little extra time and be a little extra careful, and it works just fine. Okay, so now I'm going to take that up. And go to our card. And I'm going to do this a little offset. I think that looks pretty. Let's see. Let's do it this way. And then my mother-in-law had bought me some fun little embellishments to use with my kids. And this green one just happens to match, so I thought I'd use it. It's a little pearl drop. And what's nice with these, even though when you put them on the paper, they have a little point, that point goes away and it dries perfectly round. It just looks like a little bead. If you had a clear type of this paint, it would look really pretty to do little water droplets on the leaves, but I don't have that, and so we're just going to use this. I think I'm going to put a dot on my sentiment as well. That'll look pretty. So there you have it, a simple 2-layer card. I'm only using 1 piece of cardstock and 1 piece of decorative paper, and there it is. As I said, this is my first video. I'm hoping to make some more. I might do a couple more of this set and we'll go from there. So let me know if there's anything you want to see or you have any questions, and I will list what I used down below. I thought I would jump back on real quick and show you the exact same card in a different color scheme to help spark your creativity. And I actually like this one more than the original card.